Welcome to Working Man Investor. On this channel, I discuss the economic environment and the steps that people can take to protect themselves and their family's financial future. Today's video is going to be part 2 of the Cantillon Effect, chapter 6 of part 2 of his essay. If you're wondering where the manufacturing jobs of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s that the United States once have went, and if you're hopeful that the tariffs that Trump is either enacting or threatening to enact are going to bring manufacturing back to this country, you're going to want to watch this video because it's going to answer a lot of questions for you. I'm going to read from the Cantillon Effect, Cantillon essay. Again, like I said in my last video, you can download this for free from the Mises Institution, or you can pay 50, 60, 70 bucks and buy it on Amazon. Better off just to download it for free. So I'm going to start by summing up the first video that I did. Richard Cantillon was an economist of the 1700s. He is one of the fathers of economics, in my opinion. Adam Smith, who is considered the father of economics, studied Richard Cantillon's essay and developed some of his theories and economic beliefs off of it. So Cantillon, in the 1700s, knew that there was two ways for money to enter an economy in a domestic state or city, and that was the discovery of a gold or silver mine. And that was the first video. The second video is going to be on exporting, producing stuff that other people want to buy. So to sum up the first video really quickly, he just noticed that when these people that were closest to the new money, which was the mine, brought that new money, so the refiners, the mine owners, the mine workers, the smelters, they got this new money and they came into the local market. The market hadn't been introduced to the new money yet, so prices hadn't started to go up yet. These people that had access to this money were able then to buy all these assets and all these goods before prices started to rise, which was a huge advantage. So after they did it, the entrepreneurs and the artisans in the marketplace, the tavern owners that were selling beer and wine and meat, they were next in line to get the money. So at that time, prices really hadn't started to rise yet either. So then they went out and they spent it. So those two groups had a huge advantage. Who got hurt by this? Well, it was the property owners on leases that couldn't raise their leases, and the work people on anybody on a fixed income. Because as the prices start to go up from this new money coming into the economy, their wages don't go up. So they're forced to cut back, just like today. And when they finally do get a raise, access to the new money, it didn't really matter because prices had already risen to the point to where they were worse off. And if they had any savings, that could have been wiped out during the inflationary environment too. So they were making more money, but they were worse off. So that's the first part. The second part here, I'm going to read directly from this Cantillon essay. Keep showing it because I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to understand this economic law. So in this one, I'm going to read directly from it, and then I'm going to sum it up for you. I'm going to try to keep this video short because I don't want it to get too long. So I'm going to start right away by reading. So this is chapter 6 of part 2. The same second way that he's describing that money can enter, a new money comes into a system, and it's through exporting. So he says, now, if the increase of money in the state comes from a balance of foreign trade, i.e. from sending and manufacture goods of greater value and quantity than is imported and consequently receiving the surplus of money. So now I want you to think about the United States in the 40s, 50s, 60s, our heyday. We were the hub of manufacturing for the world. Part of the reason was our standards of living hasn't raised, so you could work for less money and still enjoy a good standard of life. The other part, Europe, Japan, had no choice but to buy from us. World War II ravaged their manufacturing. They didn't have the ability to make anything. So what happened is we produced all the goods and services and we sold it to them. They paid for it, and all this money kept coming into our system, okay? This began to enrich multiple people's lives. This annual increase of money will enrich a great number of merchants and entrepreneurs in the state and will give employment to numerous artisans and workmen who provide the goods sent to the foreigner for whom the money is drawn. Again, United States. This annual increase of money, so the money coming in from exporting, selling your goods and services to other countries who then give you money, it will enrich a great number of merchants and artisans and entrepreneurs in the state and give employment to numerous workmen. So again, think of the 40s. These entrepreneurs built these big factories, the Henry Fords of the world. They built these huge factories, and what did they do? They employed people and they gave people good paying jobs. And you didn't need a high level of education. All you really needed to do was have a good work ethic and show up to work every day, and you could make a good wage. So all this new money is flooding in from these exports, and it's enriching a large number of people, the whole country. This hasn't changed. This is why the Cantillon Effect is so important to understand. So back to his essay. This will gradually increase consumption of these industrious inhabitants and will raise the price of land and labor. Okay? So you're making more money. What does human nature do when you have a windfall of money? You go out and you start to buy things. So you're starting to spend this money now that you're making. One thing I want to explain here, and he talks about it at another time in this essay, is it isn't the printing of great money that causes prices to increase. It is the velocity of money that causes prices to rise. So what is that? So think today, the Federal Reserve prints out $1 million for every American citizen. That's ridiculous, but this is an extreme example. They then deposit it directly into our bank accounts, just like during COVID when we all got that, $2,800 stimulus. So everybody gets $1 million. If nobody were to spend that money, not realistic, but just saying, nobody spends that money, prices do not go up. Because the fact that there's more money created and sitting dormant in our checking accounts doesn't cause anything to go up. It's velocity of money. So when human nature kicks in and everybody takes that $1 million, they start buying houses, cars, remodeling, you will get massive inflation from all this money chasing the goods and services. From that velocity of money is money exchanging hands. I take this money, I give it to you. You take it, you give it to whatever merchant who then takes that windfall of money and they go buy a new car. And and it keeps going. Velocity of money, the speed of how fast money moves through an economy. That's what causes inflation. Not the Federal Reserve like you'll see on the internet saying, oh, the printing press goes brr and we're all going to suffer massive inflation. No, not if that money doesn't get spent. Not if it goes to the banks and the banks use it to shore up their balance sheets and never loan it out and nobody gets it and spends it. It's velocity of money. I want to hammer that point home. So stop looking at how much the Federal Reserve is printing and start looking to see how it's moving through the economy. All right, so back to this. He says they will gradually increase their consumption, velocity of money. They're making more money. Now they're starting to spend it. That money's getting out into the economy. These industrious inhabitants will raise the price of land and labor. He says it right here. We'll raise the price of land and labor. Everything's starting to, you're spending more money, things are getting more expensive, you're increasing the price of land, which I would assume would be the property owners that renting out stuff. The lease, every time a lease is up, they got to raise the rent, just like landlords today. I'm a landlord. Every year, taxes go up, insurance goes up because of inflation. What do I have to do? I have to bump it up a little bit to my tenants. You just have to do that. And then labor, you're going to demand a higher wage because everything's getting more expensive. You have to make more money in order for your standard of living to remain the same. Just not even to get ahead, just to remain the same, to where you can keep a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food on the table. And he goes on to say, but the industrious people who are eager to acquire property will not at first increase their expenditures. They will wait until they have accumulated a large sum for which they can draw a secure interest income of their occupation. Once a large number of inhabitants have acquired considerable fortunes from this money, which enters the state regularly and annually, velocity of money. At first, a lot of times, and you'll see people do that, and any of you that have just gotten a good job, your first good job as an adult, what do your parents often say? Build up a nest egg, save that money. Don't go out and buy a brand new motorcycle, a brand new car, save up for a house, put a big down payment down. Solid advice. The industrious people did the same thing when Cantillon was in. They built up a nest egg. At first they wanted to save up for a big purchase, like a property, a home, something like that. But once they did that, money kept going. They continued to consume. Velocity of money. Okay. They will enter the state regularly and annual. They will not fail to increase their consumption and raise the price of everything. They're chasing goods and services. It's getting more expensive. Although these higher prices result in a greater expenditure, than they first contemplated, getting more expensive than they thought, they will, for the most part, continue so long as the capital lasts. For nothing is easier or more pleasant than to increase the family's expenditure, and nothing is more difficult or unpleasant to increase it. You start making more money on your regular job, and you start going out to eat more often, you start buying your kids nicer clothes, whatever. Increasing that expenditure feels good, and nothing hurts more than be like, all right, kids, we got to cut back. All right, you tell your spouse, we got to cut back. That hurts. Nobody wants to do that, so they keep spending for as long as the money lasts. This is why it's important if you ever want to get ahead in life and build wealth, which is completely off topic from the Cantillon Effect. I just see an opportunity to throw this in. You have to stop being a consumer. Now, we all consume to some point. You need clothes on your back. You need shelter. You need food. But you want to be a producer or an investor. You want to add value to the economy. Then you can build wealth. But that's for another video. Okay, so then he goes on to say, if the annual and continuous balance has caused a considerable increase of money in the state, it will not fail to increase consumption, rise the price of everything, and diminish the number of inhabitants. Now, what does he mean by diminish the number of inhabitants? To me, look at how the birth rates have dropped in the United States over the past couple of decades. I had it written down, I lost it, but it was something like, I don't even want to speculate. But if you really want to know, put a comment, I'll look it up and put it in comments for you. People are having less kids, partly because kids are so expensive now. And our jobs aren't as stable. You could lose your job at any time. Do you want to have one kid, 2 kids, 3, 4? If that happens, you only want to have one. So it diminishes the population. As your standard of living goes up and you hear it all the time. You talk to a parent, man, my kid's expensive. Yeah. You want to have kids? We're going to wait another 4 or 5 years because we got to save more money. We want to get more ahead. And there's been people out there that have planned this, and then by the time they're ready to have kids, the wife isn't as fertile and they have problems. This is not a new phenomenon. Cantillon observed this too. As our standards of living increase, our children get more expensive, which means we reduce the number of children we have, if we have children at all, which reduces the number in the population, which in itself weakens the nation. So, the rise of the price of it will diminish the number of inhabitants, then he says, unless products are drawn from abroad proportionate to increased consumption, meaning the foreign production starts to get imported. We're going from a producer, exporter, saver nation to a consumer nation who buys products from other countries. Now, this is important to comprehend if you're sitting here wondering what happened to all of our manufacturing jobs that the United States once have. And we were a manufacturing hub of the world when a father could work in the factory and the family could have a nice home. The wife could stay at home. They could have the 2, 3, 4 kids, the large family, and they could take vacations every year and afford to send their kids to college if the kids wanted to go to college because that was cheaper. This is what we're talking. This is the Cantillon Effect. Moreover, in states that have acquired a considerable abundance of money, it is natural to import many goods from neighboring countries where the money is rare. When he says money is rare, what he's saying is these countries, their standard of living is much lower than the domestic country. In this case, I'm talking about the United States, so they can produce it cheaper, which means they can sell it cheaper. And consequently, everything is cheap. Have you ever watch politicians? They're really good at this. Democrats and Republicans. Have you ever seen a news clip where they're banging on their desks saying, we got to go after such X, Y, and Z company because they're in China, they're in Mexico, and they're using slave labor? Have you ever seen that? When I see learn to cut through the noise, this is an example of it. It's in one of my other videos. Mexico has a shipping hub close to the border of the United States where the standard of living is roughly $8 a day and they pay $20 a day. So now let's use that example. There's a politician screaming, this company is only paying these Mexican workers $20 a day. It's slave labor. We cannot keep up as the United States of American worker. Can't compete with that. Can't do it. Is it slave labor? it takes $8 a day to live in that area because their standard of living is lower and they're making 20. No, it's not. Their standard of living hasn't risen to the point of the United States, so they can work for less and still live a good life because it takes less, because their prices have not gone up yet. That's where he's talking about money is more rare. And then what they can do, they can produce it cheaper. And they send it into us because we have money to spend. We don't want to spend it on our domestic manufacturing because our domestic manufacturing has gone completely under because they can't compete with these other countries where money is rarer and it's cheaper to do it. And we enrich them. And I'm going to get to what our modern day gold mine is at the end of this video. So the cheapness of the land and labor in foreign countries where money is rare would naturally cause the building of factories and businesses similar to those of the state, but will not at first be as perfect or highly valued. Now, I talked about this a little bit on the first video of the Cantillon Effect. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on this. So what he's talking about, I want you to think about the United States again, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, okay? We are exporting. Our standard of living is rising. We're making more money. Now, there are these businesses that are selling to these foreign countries and bringing their new money in has to raise the price because our labor is more expensive. These foreign countries begin to look at the prices of everything coming in and say, wow, this is really getting expensive. Let's build our own factories. We can compete with this because our people, our citizens, can sell their labor cheaper than the United States citizens, and then we can build it cheaper. We can stop buying from them. That's how it starts. That's the actual goal. So they build it, and at first it's junk, okay? It's like anything else. How many times have you told your kids or your parents told you when you're trying something, the kid's complaining about how bad he is, and you say, yeah, well, keep doing it. Keep practicing. You're going to get better. Same with manufacturing. The more they made it, it got better and better and better and better, to the point where their citizens would buy it from them instead of importing it from us because it was cheaper. Then we lose that balance of trade. We're no longer selling that product, whatever they're now manufacturing, and getting that new money into our system. Then it turns on its head. Now they realize, wait, not only do we not need to buy this from the United States anymore, we can sell it to the United States because they're a wealthy nation and we can sell it cheaper. And they're going to want to spend their money not on their expensive domestic manufacturing, but on our product because it's gotten to the point where we're just as good. So then they're selling it to us. So now our domestic manufacturing can't keep up and it goes under, and you get politicians and trade unions, and I'm a trade union person too. I'm not anti-union, but what do they scream? Corporate greed, and that's some of it, no doubt. Corporate greed, dirty politicians, paying off politicians, that all plays into it. But ultimately, the economic law says that's going to happen anyways. All you can do is kick the can down the road further. So that's really what happened to our domestic manufacturing, is we got to the point where our standard of living raised so much we couldn't compete. Now it's all gone under. And you saw the push, buy American, buy American. Does that really work? How many of you, if you took some truth serum, even though you really want to have good manufacturing jobs for your kids, your grandkids, your brother, your sister, if you could get something cheaper that was just as good as made here, would you pay for the foreign product that's just as good? We all do it. That's why Buy American doesn't really work. Nice slogan, cute. But it comes down to keeping a roof over your head and feeding your family. You got to do what's best for you financially. That's life. That's the economic laws. So, that's enough of this Cantillon Effect. He then goes on just to talk about trade routes. If you're a country and your labor is more expensive, and he's watching this in the 1700s, so there's no railroad or planes, but you're right on a river, so you can ship it cheaper, you have a competitive advantage. So you can produce it for more money, but you can ship it cheaper, so you can last for a while longer. Kind of like what China's trying to do now with their Belt and Road Initiative. That's a teaser for another video I got coming up, because China's starting to suffer from the Cantillon Effect now, too. There's a reason why Vietnam, Malaysia, and Mexico are becoming the new manufacturing hubs of the world and not China. It's because their labor is cheaper. China's middle class has expanded immensely in the past 30 years. Because of this, their standard of living has risen. Because of this, their wages have risen. Because of this, they can no longer manufacture as cheap as Mexico, Malaysia, and China. It's life. So, let me sum this video up by talking about how does the United States get money now? Because we're still the number one superpower in the world, and we're still have a good standard of living here, despite the fact that we've gone from a manufacturing economy to a service economy, and the manufacturing is not coming back. I'm probably not going to get into that too much here. That'll be more part 3 because this video is already going on 22 minutes, and I want to cut it. So, what's our gold and silver mine today? What's our export now, since we no longer have either one of those? We're no longer a discovery of a gold and silver mine. It's not going to affect the United States. We're too big. We're not manufacturing very much other than stuff people have to buy. Oil, natural gas, and believe it or not, last time I checked about 6 months ago, blood. Blood was like number 9 in what we export. Well, you think about it. Hospitals around the world need blood. We have it to give. They'll buy it from us. So if it's not absolutely necessary for life, we're not really selling it. Not many luxury items are leaving the United States. There's some, but not many. Not enough to bring manufacturing back. It's our debt. It's our U.S. treasuries. How many times have you heard people panic about our deficit, which is very concerning? I'm not saying it's not, and I'm really, really hopeful that we're going to start addressing it now in the political environment that we're in, because it's talked about more. And Jerome Powell came out last year and said, the Fed chairman Jerome Powell said, this is not sustainable. We cannot stay on this path. We're okay now, but not down in the future, not towards the future. So what do we sell? We sell our debt in the form of U.S. treasuries. So as people are worried about our debt, and you see people pop up on YouTube, other content creators talking about buy gold, buy silver, buy Bitcoin, the dollar's going to suffer hyperinflation and we're all going to go into poverty. One day that's going to happen. I don't see that happening anytime soon. It's not a bad idea to have some gold and silver in your portfolio. In fact, I would recommend it. But what these people don't mention is that while we are currently the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, we are also the only debtor nation in the history of the world that has the absolute privilege to borrow money in our own currency. Now, what do I mean by that? We sell our debt in the form of U.S. treasuries, the 2-year, the 10-year, the 30-year note. So we're the reserve currency of the world. 60% of transactions are settled in dollars through the global economy. Countries export to us. They sell us their stuff. We send them the dollar. They then take that dollar and they settle the transactions in the global economy, but they also buy our debt. So China will take $10 billion of money that they have left over from exporting and buy $10 worth of U.S. treasuries. All that money comes back into our country and we use it to build our roads, our infrastructure, etc. When that debt expires, we pay them back. They take that money and they buy our debt again. So it's just a circle. It's a big circle of us selling our debt. That's how we're bringing new money into this country. That's our gold mine. That's what we export. We export our debt in the form of U.S. treasuries because it's the safest, most liquid asset in the world. No other country has that ability. No other country has the amount of deep liquid capital markets like the United States of America does. Nobody else has positioned themselves to do this, and nobody else right now at this time of making of this video, February of 2025, is willing to do it. They all want to be producers savers because that's how you build a strong economy. So that's the Cantillon effect. That's what's happened to our manufacturing. I'll touch on this real quick. If we begin to, and it's in some of my other videos, if we do begin to push these tariffs that are currently set for April 2nd, I think that is if we do block other nations from exporting and selling to us, we're going to cut off the dollar for them, which is the reserve currency of the dollar. That's going to starve the world of our dollar and possibly cause a liquidity crisis because there's not enough dollars in the system to settle transactions. Okay? And then in turn, we're going to strengthen the dollar. which is going to make it even harder for us to export. So we can produce stuff here, but it's going to be expensive. That's a whole nother video. I'll probably hit on that more on the Cantillon Effect Part 3. I want to cut this short because I'm hitting 26 minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. Working Man Investor. Keep grinding, people.